I dropped out of uni and built my dad's failing business into a success. After 6 years of grinding, my siblings in finance want in for a cushy retirement. I dropped out of university at 20 to take over my dad's failing business. My siblings said I was wasting my life. They went into finance. They got suits and bonuses and talked down to me at every family dinner. 6 years later, the business is making $3.2 million a year, and now they want equity. They want to retire early on the thing they laughed at. I'm not giving them a cent. My dad built a commercial cleaning company in 1998. At its peak, it had 40 employees and contracts across the region. By the time I was in university, it was dying. Dad had health problems. The contracts were shrinking. Key employees had left. Revenue had dropped 60% in 3 years. Dad asked all 3 of his kids for help. My brother Foster said no. He was in his second year at an investment bank and said the business was a sinking ship. My sister Piper said no. She was finishing her MBA and said she wasn't going to flush her career for a cleaning company. I said yes. I left university halfway through my second year. My professors told me I was making a mistake. My friends thought I'd lost it. Foster called me and said, "You're going to regret this in 5 years when you've got nothing." Piper said, "Some of us have ambition." I moved back home and showed up at the office on a Monday morning. The place was barely functioning. 3 employees left, 2 contracts about to expire. The books were a mess. Dad was in the hospital recovering from a knee replacement. I was 20 years old running a company I barely understood. Year 1 was survival. I renegotiated the 2 expiring contracts at lower margins just to keep them. I hired 4 people and trained them myself. I cleaned offices alongside my crew every night for 6 months because we couldn't afford to hire a supervisor. I taught myself bookkeeping from YouTube and a used textbook. I slept on the office couch 3 nights a week. Year 2, I landed a contract with a regional hospital chain. That one account doubled our revenue. I hired a proper operations manager named Reggie, who'd worked in the industry for 15 years. He taught me everything Dad couldn't. Year 3, I restructured the company. New equipment, new uniforms, new software for scheduling and billing. I spent $40,000 on upgrades that paid for themselves within 8 months. Revenue crossed $1 million. Year 4, I started bidding on government contracts. We won 2. I hired a full-time sales rep and an accountant. Staff grew to 22. Revenue hit $1.8 million. By year 6, the company had 38 employees, contracts in 4 counties, and annual revenue of $3.2 million. I'd taken a dying business and built it into something my father never imagined. Dad came to the office last year. He walked through the warehouse and looked at the trucks with the new logo and the uniformed staff loading equipment. He stood there for a long time. Then he said, "You did this. We did this." "No, I built the foundation. You built the building. That's the only award I need. Now the siblings want in." Foster called me 6 months ago. He said he'd been thinking about his future and that he wanted to discuss coming on board. "In what capacity?" "Advisory, strategic planning. I've been in finance for 8 years. I could bring a lot to the table. You told me this business was a sinking ship. I was wrong. You weren't just wrong. You said no when Dad needed help. You watched me drop out of school and called me foolish. You've never once asked how the business was doing in 6 years." He went quiet. Then he said, "I'm asking now because it's worth $3.2 million now. You weren't asking when I was sleeping on the office couch." Piper called 3 weeks later. Different approach. She sent me a formal email with a proposal for a family equity restructure. She wanted to bring all 3 siblings into equal ownership, arguing that since Dad started the business, it was a family asset. Equal ownership. She wanted a third of a company she refused to touch. I forwarded the email to my attorney. He said there was no legal basis for the claim. The business was transferred to me through a formal succession agreement when Dad retired. I own 100% of it. I called Piper. "I got your email. I think it's fair. You think taking a third of a company you declined to help build is fair? Dad started it. It's a family business. Dad offered it to all 3 of us. You and Foster said no. I said yes and spent 6 years building it while you 2 collected bonuses and told everyone I was the family dropout. You can't hold that against us forever. I'm not holding anything against you. I'm holding on to what I built. There's a difference." She said I was being selfish. Foster said I'd changed. Mom said, "They're your brother and sister." I said, "They're adults who made a choice. They chose finance. I chose the mop. The mop won." Dad stayed out of it. When I asked him what he thought, he said, "The business is yours. I gave it to you because you were the only one who showed up. What you do with it is your decision." Last month, Foster posted on LinkedIn about the value of family businesses and how they should be shared across generations. He tagged me. I didn't respond. Piper brought it up at Thanksgiving. She said she and Foster had student loans and that my success could help the whole family. I said, "I had loans too. I just also had a mop and a couch to sleep on." Reggie told me once that the hardest part of building something isn't the work. It's watching people who wouldn't carry a bucket suddenly want to hold the keys. The keys are in my pocket. That's where they're staying.